Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, we're talking with Jill Derby about President Biden's trip to the Middle East, plus things much closer to home with the Board of Regents. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Wasteful Washington spending is killing us with inflation and sky-high prices on groceries and gas. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto voted to allow hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID relief funds to be squandered on a luxury resort in Florida, a New Jersey soccer stadium, a ski area in Iowa. Tell Senator Cortez Masto to start voting against reckless spending to stop inflation. Nevada families need cheaper gas and food, not frivolous luxuries in other states.
Hello, is this D&D Roofing?
Yes, it is. How may I help you?
You did such a great job on my roof. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner.
Oh, can I speak to your supervisor?
Sure.
How may I help you?
I love your work. May I speak to the owner?
I am an owner. We're all owners. Well, that's why at D&D we work so hard to keep your home safe and sound.
Oh, no wonder.
D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal. Local, employee-owned, here for you.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always delighted to welcome back to the program Jill Derby. Among her many titles is former Democratic State Party chair. She's also chair of the board of the American University of Iraq at Soleimani, and that's where I want to start with you.
Okay, good.
The president of Iraq was on Fareed Zakaria this last weekend.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the realities of Iran and their shared border. And that's not something that we really talk about in this country. But of course, there was a 10-year Iraq-Iran war, and under Saddam Hussein, which the United States supported Iraq in that war. What were your thoughts on listening to the president? Because he seemed to make a lot of diplomatic sense, is probably the best way to put it.
Well, Dr. Barham, as we call him, who's a friend and was former chair of the board. In fact, I was out at his home about a month ago when I was over in Iraq. He's a great diplomat. And he spoke well. And, you know, the sands are shifting in the Middle East. It's part of the reason that Biden went. But where our university is as the crow flies, probably 25 miles from Iran. I mean, there's a close border there. And the Kurds, interestingly, have had a pretty good relationship with Iran over the many, many years of their challenges to create a homeland and create friends.
And just to make the point that is, your university is in Kurdistan, which is the northern portion of Iraq.
What's called Iraqi Kurdistan. And we're in the southern part, but over near the Iranian border. So we're just aware of Iran being that close to them. But that relationship has been close for years. And for Iraq, it's one they need to negotiate very carefully. You know, 60% of the Iraqi citizens are Shia. And of course, Iran is a Shia nation. So, you know, there's always that. But, you know, what's interesting is that we're reading that the Saudis and Iran are now in a conversation that Iraq is hosting. Now, that hasn't happened before. So there's a lot that's shifting in the Middle East. You know, the new alliances that Israel's made with the UAE, With Saudi Arabia, there are conversations going on.
Do you think that those are just more public conversations, because weren't those private conversations for many years?
Yes, of course. But now that we're reading about it, and in fact, Israel has shifted. Of course, it has a new prime minister. He has a more regional approach to the region, as far as I'm concerned. And Israel leadership is divided on whether an Iran nuclear deal that the U.S. is trying to advance is not a good idea. I mean, it used to be they were totally against it. Now some say a bad deal is better than no deal. And trying to calm things down in the area with sort of the old animosities that have been there at least for decades. So it's an interesting place right now, and that's part of the reason that Biden went back. And there was a lot of criticism about that, and I was one of the big critics because I hated the optics of him sitting in a room with dictators and murderers, which of course MBS, the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia, is the Khashoggi murder. And I felt it was a big compromise about U.S. values, and it was. But it was in terms of real politics or in terms of just future strategy, the right thing for a U.S. president to do, because otherwise, are we just going to allow China and Russia to have all the influence in the area? There's been a vacuum with U.S. leadership in that area.
So that goes back to the Obama administration
It
and
does.
the pivot to Asia.
You bet.
Was that a mistake, which some people are now saying, proven by the fact that President Biden has gone to Israel and Saudi Arabia?
I couldn't agree more. And I've always felt that what we did about the red line that was drawn in Syria early in that, and we backed away from that, was a huge mistake. Look what happened to Syria. It just dissolved, and that brutal dictator Assad, now people are starting to reach out to him, which is regrettable. But it's like, practicality. If you're the leader of a nation, as Biden is, you've got to position the U.S. in a global world in the best position it can be in. And we've got a new competition going on now, maybe some call it a Cold War between China and the U.S., but now China and Russia have this alliance because of the invasion, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which means we must not let stand. And, all that's in the mix about why Biden chose to go to the Middle East in spite of our historic stand for human rights. And it was like that was in the face of that. And he chose instead to go because we need to reassert our influence in the area. We had backed way back to Obama. We'd been backing away from that area. And now it's clear, what are we going to hand it over to China? By the way, whose Belt and Road Initiative has been moving into the Middle East, into the UAE. They've been doing some projects there. Their telecommunication.
Well, they were
outreach.
building a base there. That suddenly the United States realized could be a military base.
Absolutely.
And put an end to that.
Yeah.
Were you surprised over the weekend also that the New York Times put out a story that Russia is going to be buying drones, weapon-loaded drones from Iran, and that Russia has run out of drones or is running out of the kind of drones that they need, but Iran is the place they're going to for them?
Was I surprised? Not to, because it's all this shifting alliance that's going on, and Russia's...
Well, just the capability, though.
Oh no,
that Iran has.
it's a terrible thing. It's all the more reason for us to pursue the relationship with Iran. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it was a huge mistake when the Trump administration just canceled the deal, and now we're trying to renegotiate something and keep Iran from advancing their prospects of a nuclear weapon, because that's just going to be a mess in the area. Plus, there's a lot of benefit to the United States to reestablishing relationships with Iran. I mean, if we were to be able to work out a deal around the nuclear issue in Iran, they could release oil that could really help us balance the oil supply that is really gone askew because of what's happened with Russia's invasion. They have a lot of oil, and out on the world market, it would help reduce the price of oil. That was part of Biden's reason for going. But there's a lot of other good that could happen. But now, because we've isolated Iran, Russia sees an opportunity to strike a good relationship and buy weapons from them. I mean, so much is at stake in the Ukraine war. I mean, it's whether or not we're going to have a rules-based international order where you just can't, because you have the military might, change the borders of your country and expand them at the expense of another, or whether might makes right, and then, all bets are off and bring on the bombs. So, I mean, really, all of that is at stake in our winning and the West winning in Ukraine. And to do that, we've got to undermine Russia's position, because they're making just as much money or more from their oil resources as they were before. And we impose sanctions, but they're not working as effectively anyway. We're seizing a few yachts, which is satisfying, of those Russian oligarchs and Putin's friends, but never mind that he can continue to make even more money out of the oil resources. It really hurts the whole equation in terms of trying to win the war, back him off, push hard for some sort of resolution to that war.
Are you surprised at how weak, realistically, Russia's military is? Shouldn't this war have been done and over with within weeks, and not dragging on for months, and not with Russia having to go to Iran to buy weapons? And doesn't this speak to the power of the American military?
I think it absolutely does, and it speaks to how weak everyone, the world, was surprised at Russia's military weakness, and it's hurt their stature badly. Their alliance with China now is unfortunate because that sort of gives them more standing. But in fact, Russia's been shown to be a pariah in the world, almost, that it can't do what it sets out to do militarily. But, this is grinding on, and poor Ukraine, and it's so important that the West, I think what Biden has done, there's so much criticism of Biden, and the 33% approval ratings and so forth reflect, the inflation and the cost of gas. That's all people are focused on, let's face it.
Always.
Always, always, always. But look at what he's done in terms of...
James Carville, it's the economy, stupid. Right?
It is. James Carville said it over and over, and elections depend on it. The sad thing is that Biden should get credit for a lot in terms of foreign policy, and the way he unified the West and brought Europe together to confront Russia's aggression into Ukraine was really remarkable diplomacy.
But how many Americans understand
They don't.
foreign policy? Okay, let's take a break. You said it right
That's
there.
a problem.
And we'll be right back.
Wasteful Washington spending is killing us with inflation and sky-high prices on groceries and gas. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto voted to allow hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID relief funds to be squandered on a luxury resort in Florida, a New Jersey soccer stadium, a ski area in Iowa. Tell Senator Cortez Masto to start voting against reckless spending to stop inflation. Nevada families need cheaper gas and food, not frivolous luxuries in other states.
For Nevada women and families, it's no joke. The Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade, taking away a woman's right to an abortion. But Adam Laxalt calls that right a joke. Listen.
Roe v. Wade was always a joke.
Roe v. Wade was always a joke. No wonder, as Attorney General, Laxalt made it a priority to push abortion bans that let the politicians overrule women and their doctors. It's not a joke. It's our right. Women Vote is responsible for the content of this ad.
The Do It Right guys at Nevada Heating have one mission. Your air conditioner breaks down today. We fix it today. Why sweat for days while your air is down when Nevada Heating can get the job done today and you can get cool again? For nearly 50 years, locally owned Nevada Heating has been getting the job done right. Call today at 323-5585 or see us online at nevadaheating.com.
Southwest Specialties has been making the homes and businesses of Nevada beautiful for more than 20 years. Their experienced designers and craftsmen create the walkways, backyards, water features, and a variety of outdoor cooking areas that add curb appeal and value to your investment. Call today or visit them at their website and see how they can make your outdoor spaces special. Southwest Specialties, creative, distinctive, beautiful.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Jill Derby. She's the former Democratic State Party chair, and she's also chairman of the board of the American University of Iraq and Soleimani. One last thing on the Middle East. What has been getting a lot of praise with President Biden's visit to the Middle East has been the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that President Trump would be getting credit without being named for the Abraham Accords? They have really been quite successful.
Yeah. I think they have, and as I spoke earlier about the shifting sands in the Middle East, that's part of the beginning of the shift, that new ties developing with Israel, trying to bring Israel in so that there are all those connections going on. The sad thing is that the Palestinian issue hasn't advanced, and I don't think there'll ever be total peace in Israel until the Palestinians have a state of their own.
Well, doesn't Hamas have to go away?
It may have to go away. I'm not sure what needs to happen, but I'll tell you something, Sam, that's really smart Israelis are thinking about is the demographic shift that's happening. And the birth rate among Palestinians is much higher than Israelis. And eventually there are going to be a majority Palestinians in Israel. And in terms of their future, they are better off making peace and establishing a Palestinian state that everybody in the whole region has ties to, economic ties, cement ties. You know how that goes. But Israel will never be at peace as long as they are militarily occupying another people. People never stand for that. I've been reading all this World War II literature about the French resistance against the Nazis. People just don't settle to be occupied militarily. So that's an element of it that has to advance, and Biden, to his credit, it wasn't a frontline issue at all, but he visited the Palestinians in the West Bank, and he again reiterated his support for two states.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right, but the rest of the Middle East really has gone past the Palestinian issues because both sides, either Fatah or Hamas, are either corrupt or not willing to come to the table and dropping bombs across the border, and that's never going to be a solution for peace. And why would Israel agree to a peace with two enemies? Nobody seems to be working towards a peaceful solution.
Well, ultimately, Israel will work towards a peaceful solution.
They have to.
Because they have to.
They have
to. But, in the meantime, things are moving on in the larger region, and ties are being established. And as I said, Saudi Arabia and Iran are talking. Listen, that's news.
That's news. And the other piece of news, before we go to a break, is Israel having a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Jeddah.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years.
Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
I'm here at the Carson Valley Inn in Minden with Joey Whitaker, and you've got a lot of convention space and meeting breakout space for people. Tell us about what's available.
Well, we can handle a group up to about 250, and anywhere as small as 10 or 15. So it really depends on what you're looking for, what the customer's looking for. We're open to anything. It's a beautiful drive, and if you live in South Reno, it's probably about 30-35 minutes, so it's real easy to get to. It's not a long way to get away to the Carson Valley Inn.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Jill Derby. She's the chair of the board of the American University of Iraq in Suleimani. She's also the former Democratic State Party chair and was former chairman of the Board of Regents here in Nevada, and that's where I want to head.
Okay.
So Melody Rose, the former chancellor, Mary Beth Seawold, the head of the Las Vegas Chamber, wrote a scathing editorial about the way that Melody Rose was treated. She was on the committee that helped get her into the job. What were your thoughts on the ending of the career at UNL or at NSHE of Melody Rose?
Well, you know, what I want to say about that, I've spent 20 years advising different boards of regents around the country around these sorts of things. One of the things that was extraordinary, there was something that went wrong in terms of communication when it comes down to Melanie Rose as chancellor and the Board of Regents. Because one of the things that's key is trust and communication builds trust. I know that when Melody Rose made the charges she made, that was extraordinary. You just don't find a chancellor making that kind of charge against a Board of Regents, her board of bosses that she reports to that hired her. But then when the investigation was done and it didn't substantiate her charges, in fact, it said that there was inappropriate behavior, there was, I can't remember the wording of the report, but it didn't substantiate her charges. It struck me that it was a mistake that she didn't try to work something out internally rather than have it public, because making something public damages everybody involved, damages the board, damages all the universities and colleges in Nevada, and that hurt a lot. And I felt that there was a way that she felt it was a hostile environment for her, something that was not proven in the investigation, but that there was bad behavior. That was an internal matter that should have been handled that way. I have to say that as somebody who consults around the country with boards of regents in different states. Work it out internally somehow, and it's all in the world of communication and everybody getting on the table what isn't working for them and working it out. There was no place to go, but she had to leave as soon as that investigation showed that there was not a hostile environment, but there were issues of antagonisms and bad behavior.
Were you comfortable with the payout?
No, I mean, that's the thing that goes wrong with, no, but it was inevitable if you hire somebody with a contract and then it goes south. So that's why it's the responsibility of everybody to work it out. And I have to say the board's leadership failed in this regard. It should have been the board chair and the vice chair that initiated a major effort, bringing in outside counsel, bringing in outside facilitators to let's get in a room together and work it out. Now, the Nevada open meeting law works against that because I've been able to facilitate many of these working it out sessions, but not in the eyes of the press. Then people aren't willing to be forthright and honest and so forth. But that should have happened in Nevada. And it was just damaging. Listen, I heard about it from so many of my colleagues, what's going on in Nevada. It was damaging all the way around. It should have been worked out. I blame the board leadership and I blame the chancellor as well, because she's the leader and she needs to take that unrest, that unhappiness, that dissent, that whole sort of rancorous environment seriously and try to bring the leadership to it.
Okay, so what does that do for hiring the next chancellor?
Well, I mean, I think you won't get, a lot of candidates wouldn't dream of coming to Nevada. And the current, one of the things about the current board, there's so many new members, and I don't think they were well oriented into their particular role. That's critical. That's part of the work that I do, is sort of let them know exactly what your role is, how best to work with a chancellor. They were new and just inexperienced, and they handled things, I think, very badly.
Okay, we've got about a minute left. Dale Urquiarga jumps in as acting chancellor. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that was a good choice. I mean, he's so seasoned in Nevada government, isn't he? And he has a great track record, and I think they needed somebody like that. And now his job is to work with the board leadership. The board has chosen their own leadership there, and there's still, going to be some issues there. But hiring Dale Urquiarga was smart.
Does that put UNR, because of his relationship with Brian Sandoval, in the driver's seat of the next legislative session?
Well, that won't work for UNLV. And, if you look at the composition of the legislature and the influence and power of Southern legislatures, that's not going to work. And that's going to go back to my days on the board, when there was that very bitter relationship between the North and the South around higher education, UNLV, UNR.
And so you don't think that that's going to happen, or you do?
Well, they're going to have to work hard to prove. It will certainly be the optics. The perception is going to be there. And Dale is a good leader, and he's smart. He's going to have to spend a lot of time in the South. He's going to have to manage those relationships. That's going to be on his plate. And it'll prove the success or failure of his leadership, frankly.
And if anybody can do it, it's Dale Urquiarga.
Yeah.
That's where we have to leave it. Jill Derby, what a show. So many topics. Thank you so much for being here. Come back soon.
You bet. We'll
be right back.
Ahern Rentals began as Signal Gas Station on Las Vegas Boulevard. Founder John Ahern grew the business by offering rentals. His son Don built on John's legacy, growing Ahern Rentals into the largest independently owned American rental company, with 89 locations in 30 states. Don also brought his experience and vision to equipment manufacturing with Extreme Manufacturing and Snorkel. Today, Ahern Rentals continues to bring its family values to a new generation. Learn more at ahern.com.
With Nevada's only transplant center and verified burn center, the science is here. With award-winning cardiologist and the state's only dedicated heart failure clinic, the talent is here. With Nevada's most advanced robotic surgery, the technology is here. And with the Silver State's only designated pediatric trauma center, hope is here. All because we are here. UMC.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org. Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at nevadanewsmakers.com. You can also check our archive going back to 2005 on our website. Again, nevadanewsmakers.com. We'll see you on the next show.